Today on It's Your Choice, Roger and Nicole will talk about assigning possible outcomes to alternatives and why this is necessary when making a decision.
Hey Roger, what's going on?
Not much, but I did just talk to my friend Amy about an interesting decision she had to make.
Really? What was she deciding?
Well, here's what she told me.
Yeah, yesterday I went to my mom's work and I saw some dude walk in with a white shirt. He walked up and down the aisles and I was watching him the entire time. He was watching everybody else seeing what was going on. And I was like, I wonder if he's going to take anything. So I kind of stayed in the background to watch him. He walked out with something in his hands and I was like, I don't know what to do.
So what did she do?
Well,
No, wait. Before you tell the rest of the story, why don't we use this example to explore alternatives and possible outcomes?
Okay, we'll talk about our alternatives first.
And then we can add in what might happen.
This could get pretty messy with a bunch of alternatives and outcomes branching out all over the place.
Roger, you're a genius.
Ha! I know. Wait, why?
Because you just reminded me of a great tool.
What tool?
Decision trees.
What kind of trees?
Decision trees. They can help you map out a decision with the available alternatives and their associated outcomes and stuff.
Okay, so how do you make a decision tree?
I'll show you. In our example, Amy has to make a decision when she sees a shoplifter.
Right.
What kinds of alternatives could she have?
Well, 1, she could confront him. 2, she could tell someone. Or 3, she could do nothing.
So this point on the tree represents the actual decision. What to do about the shoplifter. And you named 3 alternatives, which are like 3 branches connecting to the tree.
Okay, so we have branches. Now what?
The rest comes from recognizing that we can't be certain about what will ultimately happen, so it is really useful to spend time imagining the outcomes that could result from each alternative.
Like what outcomes?
That's up to us to imagine. Let's start with the outcomes associated with the first alternative, which is confronting the shoplifter. Take a moment to think about it, and let's ask our audience to do this too.
Take a minute and list at least 2 possible outcomes you can think of for alternative 1. Amy confronts the shoplifter.
One outcome I came up with was that the shoplifter could admit guilt and return the item.
Or he could run away.
Or he might hurt Amy.
And as you can see, each of these outcomes is connected to the confront him alternative.
So it's okay to have more than one outcome for each alternative?
Sure. That's because of the uncertainty. For any alternative, there are a number of things that can happen.
All right, so the next alternative is telling her parents or the clerk. One outcome is that they call the police and let them handle it.
Another is that the shoplifter could admit guilt and return the item.
Or her parents or the clerk could get hurt if they confront him.
Or he still could just run away.
Wait, you just named 2 of the same outcomes we listed for the first alternative. Returning the item and running away? Can you do that?
Sure. Sometimes it's possible for the same outcome to be reached by different alternatives.
Okay, so what about the last alternative? Doing absolutely nothing.
Well, then he would just get away. And we only need one possible outcome because it's virtually certain what might happen.
Okay, now I see the tree. It's a pretty helpful tool for looking at a decision with its alternatives and the associated possible outcomes.
Oh, but I forgot to mention unforeseen outcomes.
What?
These are possible outcomes that could happen even if we didn't think of them. After all, it's hard to imagine that the 2 of us could come up with every possible outcome.
That's true. But how are we supposed to visualize the possibilities we didn't think of?
Imagine this big rectangle called a possibility space. What if each outcome takes up a portion of the space? Like gets away takes up a portion of Amy's possibility space, and returns the item takes up another portion.
Oh, I see. So even with all the possible outcomes we thought of, there still might be some empty space filled with unforeseen outcomes.
Right.
But should we be trying to fill the entire space with outcomes?
Your goal should be to think of as many as you can without obsessing over them. Knowing how important a decision is will help you know when to stop.
Okay, but in this case, I think we could use a few more, like what if the shoplifter bolted but ran straight into a cop? Or if the shoplifter was caught on a security camera and was arrested anyway.
He could even be innocent. See, you could come up with outcomes all day.
And what about the alternatives? If we don't think of a certain alternative, we might not recognize its possible outcomes.
Are there any other alternatives for Amy's decision?
Well, she could video the shoplifter with her Me phone.
And send it to the cops to catch the criminal.
Or get her Me phone stolen by the shoplifter and end up with a lame phone like mine.
And we've come up with a couple of new outcomes. But another thing to consider is that thinking about all this can take a lot of time, which sometimes we don't have.
Like Amy. So we don't have to draw a tree every time?
Of course not. It all comes down to practicing. If we think about decisions as trees and outcomes as being in a possibility space, we'll get better at it. Which reminds me, what did Amy do?
Well, that's the funny part. While she was telling the story, she got a text reminding her that she had to go to her next class, so I didn't really catch the end of it. You know, even though we drew a tree, I'm not sure what I would have done if I were in Amy's shoes. After all, we didn't really cover how to pick the best alternative.
You're right. And decision trees can do more than just map out the alternatives and outcomes. If a decision is complicated like Amy's, trees can help us take into account how likely each outcome is to occur and how valuable each outcome is to us as individuals. And we'll cover that in a later episode.
Today on It's Your Choice, we learned how to use decision trees to map out a decision with its alternatives and possible outcomes. We also saw that alternatives can have many possible outcomes because of the uncertainty of what will happen, and that collectively, outcomes fill the possibility space of all things that might happen.
All this talk about trees is making me feel very environmentally friendly today.
Nice to see you go green, Roger. And now you can also go home. We'll see you next time on
It's Your Choice.